My daughter forgot to hang up her phone. That is how I heard it, her voice, flat and practical, saying, "It is time for him to go to a nursing home. He is a burden." She was talking about me. I did not say a word, but something inside me cracked wide open. That was the day I decided to act. I sold the house for $790,000. When they returned from a business trip, smiling like nothing had changed, they found a surprise waiting for them. Their house key no longer fit the lock. On the doorstep sat a folded note. They read it, and their faces twisted with shock before the shouting began. And at that moment, I understood, this fight was not over. That was only the beginning. But before I tell you the rest, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you are listening from. The night it all started, the phone rang just as I was scraping the last bit of meatloaf off my plate. Marion's recipe, though, truth be told, mine never tasted the same without her touch. I glanced at the caller identification and felt a smile creep across my face despite the loneliness that usually hung heavy around me. "Hannah. Dad, how are you holding up?" she asked. Her voice carried that familiar warmth that always managed to press down on my chest, a strange mix of love and emptiness. I eased back into Marion's old recliner, the leather worn smooth from years of her evening reading. "Oh, you know me, sweetheart," I answered. "Just finished dinner and was about to watch the news." I did not tell her it was leftovers from 3 days ago. I did not admit that I had been staring at Marion's photograph on the mantel for an hour, wishing she could tell me what to do. "Are you eating enough?" she asked. "You know you can order groceries online now, right? I showed you how to use the app." "I am eating plenty," I said quickly. Then I added, a little softer, "though I had a scare yesterday. Forgot to turn off the burner under the coffee pot. Lucky I smelled it before it burned the house down." There was a pause. I could picture her frown, that little crease between her eyebrows, the same one her mother used to get when she worried. "Dad," she said carefully, "maybe we should think about having someone check on you more often." "Eric thinks I am fine," I replied. Then, trying to change the subject, I asked, "How is your business trip going? You are in Seattle, right?" "Yes," she said. "The conference ends tomorrow. Eric has been handling most of the client meetings while I sit through presentation after presentation on digital marketing. Honestly, it is exhausting." She gave a small laugh, but it sounded forced. "Listen, Dad, I should probably go. Eric and I have dinner plans with some investors." "Of course, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Dad. Take care of yourself, okay?" I heard the click, then the muffled rustle of her phone being dropped into her purse. I almost hung up my end when new voices reached me, faint, but clear enough. "Eric, you see how he is deteriorating?" It was Hannah's voice, no longer soft, no longer warm. "He forgot to turn off the stove yesterday. What if he burns the house down?" My hand froze on the receiver. A chill spread through my chest. "It is time for a nursing home," Eric said. His voice was cold, matter-of-fact. "He is becoming a burden, Hannah. Your father is a good man, but he cannot live alone anymore. The house is worth nearly $700,000. Hannah answered, her tone shifting from concern to calculation. "With the Portland market, we could probably get $600,000, maybe more." "Exactly," Eric replied, pleased. "We could sell it, put him somewhere not too expensive, and finally buy that place in Bend we wanted. The one with the mountain view." And then Hannah laughed. My daughter laughed. "You should have seen him tonight," she said. "So grateful just to hear from me. He has no idea what we are planning. The longer we wait, the more confused he will get. We should act while he still trusts us completely." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the hardwood floor Marion and I had laid together 23 years ago. I had placed every board myself, driven every nail with dreams of our family's future. I sat in the stillness of the house, staring at Marion's photograph. Her eyes seemed to pierce right through me with an expression I could not quite name. Was it warning? Disappointment? Or simply the knowing look of someone who had already crossed into the next world? The grandfather clock in the hallway, her anniversary gift to me 15 years ago, ticked on steadily in the silence. Outside, the first crickets of spring sang in the garden Marion had planted with her own hands. Something hard and cold took root inside me, pushing out the warmth I had felt when Hannah first called. My hands, scarred and worn from decades of construction work, curled slowly into fists. They thought I was a burden. They thought I was weak, confused, ready to be tucked away. Already they were counting my money, planning their new life on the bones of mine. But they were wrong. I was not dead yet. And I was not nearly as helpless as they believed. I do not know how long I sat there in the dark, Marion's face watching me from the silver frame. The house itself seemed to hold its breath, like it had overheard every word of Hannah's betrayal. When I finally stood, my legs felt unsteady. I switched on the lamp. Its warm glow spilled across the living room we had built piece by piece. The burgundy sofa where Hannah once sprawled with her schoolwork. The coffee table I had made in the garage, sanding it smooth while she played at my feet. Every object, every corner of that room carried our family's story, until tonight. Tonight, it all felt different. I made my way into the kitchen and pulled open the drawer where I kept years of old papers. My fingers landed on the folder without even needing to think. 2 decades worth of records, kept because Marion always told me, you never know when something might come in handy. Inside were tuition receipts from the University of Oregon. $45,000 spread out over 4 long years. I remembered every double shift I worked to cover it, coming home with concrete dust in my hair, plaster dried under my fingernails. Marion would be there with a cup of coffee, massaging my aching shoulders while I sat at this very kitchen table with the bills spread out like battle plans. "Walter, you are working yourself into the ground," she whispered one night as I tried to figure out how to pay for Hannah's spring semester. "She deserves better than we ever had, Marion. She is smart enough to do anything," I told her. Marion had kissed the top of my head gently and warned, "Just do not give her so much that she forgets how to be grateful." I should have listened. God help me, I should have listened. The folder held other reminders too. The wedding receipts. $29,000 for one single day. I had told Hannah we could manage 6, maybe 9 if we stretched, but she had cried until her makeup ran. She wanted her dream wedding. So I worked weekends for 6 months, installing hardwood floors for a friend who paid me under the table. "Daddy, you are the best father in the world," she whispered into my ear during our dance, her head pressed against my shoulder, her dress rustling against my rented tuxedo. I will never forget this. But she had forgotten. She had forgotten who co-signed her first car loan when her credit would not carry it. Forgotten who pulled strings to land her that marketing job after 8 months of unemployment. Forgotten all of it. Deeper in the folder were bank statements from 2 years ago, when Eric had lost his financial advisor job under circumstances they never fully explained. They had moved in with me, just for a while, they said, until he got back on his feet. I never asked for rent. I covered the utilities, the groceries, the cost of running a house with 3 adults instead of one lonely widower. Eric would clap me on the shoulder, telling anyone who would listen that I was the most generous man in all of Oregon. Hannah would hug me tight and promise, "Dad, we will pay you back when we are stable." Well, they had been stable for over a year now. Both had good jobs, both earned more than I ever made in construction. But there was never any talk of moving out. Never a word about repayment. I thought of last month's anniversary dinner, $200 at that fancy steakhouse because Eric insisted they deserved to celebrate. Or the time his BMW's transmission went out and I handed over $3,000, emptying my emergency fund in one blow. "Walter is like a father to me," Eric bragged at their barbecue last summer, his arms slung over my shoulders. "I am lucky to have married into this family." And I, damn fool that I was, felt proud. Proud to be the generous father-in-law. Proud to be the man who always shouldered the load, no matter what it cost him. I climbed the stairs to Marion's and my bedroom, still untouched after 2 years. Her jewelry box rested on the dresser. Her reading glasses sat folded by the lamp. I pulled open the bottom drawer and found what I was looking for, the original house deed. Walter and Marion Grayson, purchased 1999. No liens. No co-signers. Just our names, and now only mine since Marion had passed. I stood there in that room where she had spent her last days, surrounded by the life we had built together. The hurt inside me still cut like broken glass, but under it something harder was taking shape. They wanted to tuck me away in some home and sell off my life's work. They thought I was old, confused, too grateful for scraps of attention to put up a fight. I looked at Marion's picture on the nightstand, hearing her voice as clearly as if she were in the room, "Do not give her so much that she forgets to be grateful." Well, she had forgotten. But she was about to remember that her old man was not as helpless as she thought. I went into my office and pulled open the desk drawer. There it was, the business card I had saved for 3 years. Martin Blake, real estate attorney. Marion had insisted we meet him after her diagnosis, just to be sure everything was in order. Looked like it was time for another meeting. The next morning, I walked through my house with new eyes. Not as a man seeing home, but as someone seeing through Hannah and Eric's gaze. Square footage. Market value. Liquid assets. In the kitchen, my hand brushed across the granite countertop I had installed myself under lamplight after long days on the job. We could not afford contractors back then, so I cut and set every slab myself. Marion had picked out the color, a speckled gray shot through with gold veins that caught the morning light. For 16 years, she brewed her coffee here until the cancer drained her strength. Now I stood in that same kitchen, and for the first time, I understood, to them, it was not a home. It was a price tag. I could still see it as if it were yesterday, Christmas morning, Hannah only 3 years old, wobbling across the kitchen floor from the refrigerator into Marion's waiting arms. Marion scooped her up, tears streaming down her face as she spun our little girl in circles. "Our baby is walking in the house we built for her," she whispered, her voice breaking with joy. I remember fumbling for the camera, desperate to catch that first miracle step in the place we had poured our lives into. This house held 25 Christmas mornings, each etched in my memory. When Hannah was 7, I unveiled the dollhouse I had been building for months in the garage. Every night, after she went to bed, I worked in secret, sawing, sanding, painting. Marion stitched tiny curtains and crafted miniature furniture out of scraps. Hannah's eyes lit up brighter than the tree when she squealed, "Daddy, it looks just like our house." And it did. I had built it as a replica, right down to the little bay window of her bedroom. That bay window had cost me 6 months of overtime. Marion had seen it in a magazine, fallen in love with the idea of reading there in the afternoons. We could not afford it, but I learned to cut angles I had never tried before, measured and remeasured until my back ached from crawling around the frame. When Marion worried aloud, "Walter, we cannot afford this," I simply told her, "If you want it, you will have it. I will make it work." I climbed the stairs to Hannah's old room, still painted that soft buttery yellow she chose for her 16th birthday. Her walls still carried photos of high school friends, college moments, pieces of a life that had grown away from here. I could still picture myself rocking her through sleepless nights in that room, or sitting beside her with Marion as we helped her through algebra at the little white desk I had built to fit perfectly under the window. The master bedroom, though, was the hardest to enter. Marion's side of the bed was frozen in time, her water glass still on the nightstand, her bookmark still resting in the novel she would never finish. The walk-in closets, which I had built to fit her height and reach, still carried her clothes. If I closed my eyes, I could almost smell her perfume. This room had been where we planned our future, whispered dreams for Hannah's life, and where Marion finally slipped away holding my hand, machines beeping their cruel rhythms around us. Near the end, she whispered, "Promise me, Walter, you will not let them take advantage of you. You are too kind, too generous. Please take care of yourself." I had promised her. But standing there now, I realized I had not kept that promise. In my office, I pulled open the folder Marion had kept with photos of our construction days. There I was in 1999, laying the foundation, 25 years younger and 50 pounds stronger. Pictures of my crew raising the frame. Marion in a hard hat, her belly just beginning to show with Hannah, handing out lemonade in the summer heat. The photos told part of the story, but the receipts told the rest: second mortgage, a personal loan from my brother, Marion taking a part-time job at the school just to help cover costs. We had eaten beans and rice until we were sick of it, driven cars patched together with duct tape, but together we had raised these walls with sacrifice, sweat, and love. And now my own daughter, the baby who had taken her first steps in this kitchen, the girl who had played in the yard I landscaped by hand, wanted to sell it all and shove me into some nursing home like an old piece of broken furniture. I picked up Martin Blake's card from my desk. Its edges were worn from years of handling, but the phone number was still clear. Hannah and Eric believed I was a confused old man, ready to hand over my life's work without question. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I dialed Martin's number, my hands steady as stone, listening to the rings echo through the quiet house. Outside, the spring morning was bright and clear, the kind of morning Marion used to love. The kind of day that felt made for new beginnings. The law office of Blake & Associates sat on the second floor of a modest brick building on Hawthorne Boulevard. No fancy skyscraper, no polished glass, it was the kind of place regular people went when they needed real help. I wore my best suit, the charcoal one Marion had chosen for her funeral, and I arrived 15 minutes early. My hands trembled only slightly as I signed the visitor sheet. Martin Blake turned out to be younger than I expected, maybe mid-50s, silver at the temples, with the calm eyes of a man who had heard every family disaster twice over. His office was lined with law books, photos of his wife, 2 teenagers, and a golden retriever. The normal family life Marion and I had always dreamed of. "Mr. Grayson, good to see you again," Martin said warmly, pouring coffee from a small machine in the corner. The smell filled the room, grounding me between all those legal documents and filing cabinets. "I remember you and Marion from a few years back. I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. I took the cup he offered, then leaned forward. "I need to talk to you about something delicate, about my daughter and her husband." Martin nodded, pen poised above his notepad, ready to listen. "I am listening," Martin said, his pen poised above the legal pad. So I laid it all out for him, the phone call, the voices I was never supposed to hear, their plan to sell my house and tuck me away in some facility like yesterday's junk. His face stayed calm, but I caught the faint shake of his head when I told him about their talk of that Ben dream house. "Mr. Grayson," Martin said finally, setting down his pen, "you would be surprised how often this kind of thing happens. Adult children convincing themselves they know what is best for aging parents, especially when property or money is involved." My stomach tightened. "But legally, they cannot do anything, right?" He leaned back in his chair, steady and professional. "Let's start simple. Since your wife passed, the deed is in your name alone, correct?" "That is right," I said. "Marion and I were joint owners. When she died, it transferred fully to me." "Then let me be clear," Martin said, his voice firm. "Your daughter and son-in-law have no claim on your house. They cannot sell it. They cannot force you into care. They cannot touch 1 cent of your assets without your permission. The property belongs entirely to you." Relief surged through me, hot and sharp, followed by something harder. "So if I decided to sell it myself?" He nodded. "You could put it on the market tomorrow. It is your choice." He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. "But may I ask why you are considering that?" I thought of Hannah's cruel laugh, of Eric calculating my worth like a balance sheet, of 25 years of sacrifice turned into nothing more than a real estate transaction. My grip tightened on the coffee cup. "They think I am helpless. They think they can manage me like a problem. Maybe it is time I show them exactly how wrong they are." Martin studied me in silence for a moment before speaking. "Portland's market is strong right now. Especially your neighborhood. Homes are selling fast, often in days, sometimes with cash offers over asking. If you wanted to move quickly, before they return from Seattle, we could likely close within a week. Possibly less." He leaned forward, folding his hands. "But Mr. Grayson, this would be a major decision. Once the sale is complete, there is no undoing it." I set the cup down and looked him square in the eye. "Mr. Blake, I built that house with my own 2 hands. Every board, every nail, every detail. I know exactly what I am doing." For the next hour, we went over numbers and logistics. Market value, cash buyer networks, legal paperwork. Martin assured me he could have everything in motion within 24 hours if I gave him the word. As I rose to leave, he added, "The consultation fee is $200. If you move forward, it will go toward the cost of handling the sale." I paid in cash. My head felt clearer than it had in months. Outside, the spring sun was warm on my shoulders as I walked back to my truck. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Hannah's name glowing on the screen. For the first time since hearing her betrayal, I smiled. The call rang once, twice, 3 times. I pictured her in some hotel lobby in Seattle, checking her watch, expecting her old man to jump at the chance to hear her voice. Not this time. Let her wonder. Let her think she was still pulling the strings. I slid behind the wheel, Martin Blake's card tucked safe in my wallet. A plan was forming now, solid, deliberate, the kind of plan that would show my ungrateful daughter exactly who her father really was. By the time I turned onto my street, the trembling in my hands had vanished. Martin's words echoed in my mind, "It is your property, your decision." For 25 years, I had second-guessed myself. Not anymore. As I fit the key into my front door, the phone rang again. Through the window I could see it buzzing on the counter, her name glowing. I let it sing out until the sixth ring before I finally picked up. "Dad, there you are." Hannah's voice bubbled with fake enthusiasm. "I was starting to worry when you did not answer earlier." "Sorry, sweetheart," I said, keeping my tone warm, grandfatherly. "I was out running a few errands. How's Seattle treating you?" "Oh, you know how these conferences are." She gave a light laugh. "But listen, I have the most wonderful news." She paused, drawing out the silence like she was setting up a grand reveal. "Eric and I have been planning something very special for you," she said. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned white. "Oh, we want to treat you to a vacation," Hannah continued, her voice sugar-coated. "You deserve rest and relaxation after everything you've been through since Mom passed." To anyone else, it might have sounded thoughtful. But now I could hear what I'd missed before, the practiced sympathy, the false concern. "There's this wonderful place we found," she added, her tone bright and convincing. "It's like a retreat lodge care resort with medical staff on hand. Just in case you need anything." A retreat lodge care resort. My jaw clenched so tight it felt like my teeth might crack. "That sounds lovely, sweetheart," I said, steadying my voice. "You really didn't need to go to such trouble for me." "Nonsense, Dad. Your family," she chirped. Then Eric's voice cut in from the background, slick and assured. "We've already made all the arrangements." I forced the words out. "And when were you thinking?" "Well, we should be back by next Friday," Hannah said. "We were hoping you could be ready by then. Just pack clothes and personal items. You know, the essentials." The essentials. Not Marion's photo albums. Not the furniture I'd built with my own hands. Just a suitcase for an old man they were eager to shuffle out of the way. I looked out through the bay window Marion had begged me to build, the one that overlooked her garden and the porch swing where we used to plan our future. "Actually, Hannah," I said evenly, "I've got a surprise for you, too. When you get back." Her excitement bubbled through the line. "Oh, Dad, what kind of surprise?" I could almost see the smile on her face, already imagining I'd made their job easier somehow, maybe signed over the house, maybe agreed to their plan. "It's something I've been working on since our last conversation," I said, my eyes lingering on Marion's roses blooming in the yard. "I think you'll be very surprised." "You're so sweet, Dad. We'll talk about everything when we get home. Okay? Get some rest, and we'll take care of everything else." Sweet. She called me sweet while planning to erase the life Marion and I had built. "I will, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Dad. See you Friday." The line went dead. I set the phone down with hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. Then I walked into my home office and opened the laptop. The glow of the screen lit the dark room like a stage lamp. My fingers hovered above the keyboard for only a moment before I typed, "Real estate agents, Portland." The search results filled the page, names, photos, credentials, all of it laid out like ammunition in the war I was finally ready to fight. I'd always been methodical. 25 years as a construction engineer had taught me to research carefully, to measure twice before cutting once. Tonight, those habits were about to serve me in a different kind of project. I clicked through profile after profile, scanning success rates and testimonials the way I used to scan material suppliers. Cherry Hills. Tigard. Beaverton Hills. Homes sold in days, not months. One name kept popping up, Jason Whitfield. 43 years old, specialized in fast transactions, averaging 18 days from listing to closing. His picture showed a confident smile, eyes sharp and focused, the look of a man who got things done. The testimonials sealed it. Jason sold our home in 6 days. Cash buyer lined up within 48 hours. Smooth closing, no complications. Beneath his photo was a direct number. This was it. Once I made the call, there would be no going back to being the manageable old man they thought I was. Marion's photo sat on my desk, watching me. I could almost hear her voice whispering, "Walter, are you sure?" And for the first time in years, I didn't doubt my answer. I was sure. I dialed the number with steady fingers. "Jason Whitfield, Whitfield Real Estate. How can I help you?" "Mr. Whitfield, my name is Walter Grayson. I'm interested in selling my house quickly. How fast can these things actually happen?" That depends on a few factors, he replied smoothly, but with the right property and price strategy, I've closed in as little as 10 days. Cash buyers. No complications. What kind of timeline are you considering? 10 days. My heart thudded against my ribs. 10 days. That would be faster than I'd ever imagined. Absolutely, Jason continued. The Portland market is red hot, especially for well-kept homes in established neighborhoods. Can you tell me a little about your property? I looked around my kitchen, suddenly seeing it through a stranger's eyes. 2-story, 3,400 square feet. Built in 1999, Laurelhurst. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. I've maintained it myself, kept it in good shape. I could hear his voice sharpen with interest. That sounds exactly like what several of my investors are searching for. Original owner, well-maintained, desirable neighborhood, those are exactly the kind of selling points that move properties fast, Jason said, his tone bright with professional certainty. Would you be open to a full property assessment? How soon could you come by? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. I can be there this afternoon if that works for you. Say, 3 o'clock? I glanced at the clock over the stove. Just past noon. 3 hours. 3 works perfectly, I replied. Let me give you the address. The line went quiet after we hung up, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the weight of what I'd just set in motion. In less than 3 hours, a stranger would walk through the home Marion and I had built nail by nail, memory by memory, and assign it a number. A dollar sign where my life had been. I filled the time by cleaning, almost obsessively, an old reflex from Marion's days when the house had to be spotless for guests. I dusted the bay window, straightened the pillows on the sofa, polished the counter until it gleamed. But this wasn't ordinary cleaning. No. This was preparation for an execution. Right on the dot, at 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my shirt, drew a long breath that still carried the faint scent of Marion's lavender sachets in the linen closet, and walked toward the door. My hand trembled slightly as it gripped the brass knob I'd installed 15 years ago. On the other side waited either my salvation, or my damnation. I turned the handle. Jason Whitfield looked exactly like the photo on his website, professional, approachable, early 40s, a leather portfolio tucked under one arm and a tablet in hand. The moment he stepped inside, his eyes widened. Wow, he breathed, pausing in the entryway as he looked up at the crown molding I'd carved and sanded myself, then down at the oak hardwood floors Marion and I had picked out together. Mr. Grayson, this is exactly what I was hoping for. I watched him absorb it all, the way the afternoon light streamed through Marion's bay window, the open sweep from living room into dining room, the seamless transition I'd achieved after tearing out a load-bearing wall and installing a steel beam. His admiration was genuine, not just sales talk. You weren't kidding about upkeep, he said, already pulling out his tablet to snap photos. These floors, I said almost without thinking, I laid them myself in 2001. Solid 3/4 oak. Marion wanted something that would outlive us. He crouched to run his hand over the grain. And this kitchen, Jason said, stopping at the granite counter. He traced the edge with his fingertips. Custom? Every inch, I told him. My throat caught. Marion picked the slab herself. Said the gold veining reminded her of sunlight. Took me 3 weekends to measure and fit it right. He nodded appreciatively while photographing the cabinets and checking outlets, faucets, thorough, like a man who knew exactly what buyers wanted to see. Mr. Grayson, he said finally, lowering the tablet, in 15 years I don't often see homes kept to this standard. You've done something rare here. I'm an engineer. Anyway, I replied. I was raised to believe in building it right the first time. It shows. He gestured toward the living room. Mind if I take a closer look? I followed as he moved through the open space, admiring the bookcases I'd built into the fireplace wall, the little details Marion had chosen that turned construction into a home. This bay window, he said, almost reverent. Built it for Marion, I explained softly. She wanted a reading nook. I can still see her there with her tea and mystery novels. Jason took his measurements, excitement clear in his voice. Mr. Grayson, I need to show you something. He scrolled through his tablet, pulling up comparable sales. Properties like yours, in this neighborhood, have been closing anywhere between $740,000 and $830,000. My chest tightened. More than Hannah and Eric had whispered about when they thought I wasn't listening. With your upgrades and condition, Jason continued, I'd list at 790. It'll move fast, and you'll still come out at the top of the market. 790,000, I repeated, sinking into Marion's reading chair. The number spun in my mind. That much? Mr. Grayson, Jason said, leaning forward with the confidence of a man who knew his craft, you're sitting on a gold mine. This place is one of a kind. He tapped his screen. In fact, I've got an investor group looking right now for properties exactly like this. They pay cash. No financing. No contingencies. We could close in 10 business days. 10 business days. Hannah and Eric were due back in 8. They'd walk through that door expecting to find me docile, grateful, ready to be shipped to their so-called resort. Instead, they'd find nothing but echoes. What's the catch? I asked. Why so fast? No catch, Jason assured me. Cash buyers mean no appraisals, no loan delays, no haggling over repairs. They'll still do their inspections, but honestly? Your house is in better shape than most new builds I see. I looked around the room, my eyes landing on the fireplace, the bay window, the couch where Hannah once sat with crayons in her lap. This was the home of every Christmas morning, every Sunday paper with Marion by my side. I swallowed hard. And if I did it, if I signed, when would I need to be out? Standard contracts usually give you 30 days to move out after closing, Jason explained, his voice even, reassuring. But the buyers are flexible. The important thing is getting clear title and completing the paperwork. Hannah's voice echoed in my mind, sweet on the surface, poisonous underneath, calling me sweet while scheming to strip me of everything. Eric's cold calculation followed right behind, reducing me to nothing more than a burden to be managed. And then Marion's voice, soft but firm, warning me all those years ago about being too generous. I straightened my shoulders. Let's do it. For just a moment, Jason's polished professional mask slipped, and pure excitement flashed across his face. Excellent choice, Mr. Grayson. Let me call them right now. I sat in silence as he dialed, listening to him describe my house with the enthusiasm of a man who just stumbled onto buried treasure. Laurelhurst, original owner, immaculate condition, custom features throughout. When he hung up, his smile was broad and genuine. They're ready to move forward immediately. I can have contracts drawn up by tomorrow morning. The setting sun streamed through Marion's bay window, filling the room with golden light. I had just agreed to sell 25 years of sweat, sacrifice, and memories. Yet for the first time since that devastating phone call, I felt something I hadn't in a long while, control. How does 9 o'clock sound? Jason asked. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily, Marion's 15th anniversary gift to me, its rhythm a metronome for my decision. 9 o'clock sounds perfect. After Jason left with promises of contracts and timelines, I stood alone in the quiet house. The fading evening light painted everything in warm gold, as though the walls themselves were capturing one last photograph of a life about to change forever. But instead of sadness, I felt anticipation buzzing in my veins. The next morning, Jason arrived with contracts, a notary, and coffee in hand, efficient, professional, the kind of man who left little to chance. I sat at the kitchen table Marion and I had chosen together, reading every line with the precision that had once made me a good engineer. Sale price, $790,000. Cash purchase. Closing date, 10 business days from signing. The notary, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, slid the pages in front of me, walking me through each signature. Minimal contingencies, she said. Just the title search and final walkthrough. You'll have 30 days after closing to remain in the home, if needed. I almost laughed at her words. Peace of mind. The only peace I was after would come when Hannah and Eric walked up to this house and realized their helpless old man had outplayed them. I signed with steady hands, each stroke of ink cutting through the chains of their betrayal. Just like that, the process was set in motion. The first 3 days blurred by in a storm of paperwork, phone calls, and inspections. The title company sifted through decades of records. The investors sent a team, polite, thorough, men who ran their hands along the baseboards and tested outlets. One of them even remarked, "Your father-in-law really knew what he was doing. These floors, this wiring, solid work." They assumed I was long gone, and I didn't correct them. By days 4 through 6, I'd become a man on a secret mission. I researched apartments online, looking for something modest but comfortable, somewhere I could start fresh with nearly $800,000 in the bank. I found a place in West Lynn, a senior community with golf courses and a clubhouse, the kind of place Marion and I had once daydreamed about for retirement. I called storage facilities, making lists of what to keep and what to leave. Marion's china, her jewelry box, the photo albums, those would come with me. The rest could stay for the new owners. By days 7 through 9, I carried myself with a confidence I hadn't felt in years. Each sunrise brought me closer to freedom, closer to proving I wasn't the docile, confused man they imagined. Mrs. Patterson from next door asked about the inspectors and the official-looking folks. Just some work being done, I told her. A half-truth, but safer than the full story, for now. On day 8, Jason called. Everything's on track for tomorrow's closing, Mr. Grayson. The buyers are thrilled with the inspection results. Funds will be wired the same day. That night, I packed a small suitcase, not because I was leaving yet, but because I wanted to be ready for anything. I stood before Marion's photograph and whispered, "I hope you understand what I'm doing." Friday morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of spring day Marion used to say was Portland at its very best. I dressed in my navy suit, the one she'd bought me for Hannah's college graduation. The title office was brisk, professional, and buzzing with congratulations. The buyer's attorney double-checked every line. Jason conducted the signing like a symphony conductor guiding his orchestra. "Mr. Grayson, please sign here, and here, initials there." Each stroke of my pen was deliberate, each page a release. The deed transfer, the settlement statement, the final acknowledgement, 1247 Alder Street no longer belonged to Walter Grayson. "And this," the notary said, sliding over a document, "is your wire transfer confirmation. $790,000, less closing costs, has been deposited to your account." I stared at the numbers, unable to fully believe. More money than I had ever seen in one place. More money than Hannah and Eric had even dared to dream their burden would touch. We shook hands all around. Everyone smiled, satisfied with the smoothness of the transaction. But I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about the look on Hannah's face when she came home to find the locks changed. Jason walked me out to my truck, his leather portfolio tucked neatly under one arm. "You made the right decision, Mr. Grayson," he said, shaking my hand with confidence. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what a man needs. I drove home along the streets I'd traveled for 25 years, past the elementary school where Hannah learned her ABCs, past the little park where Marion and I used to stroll hand in hand every Sunday morning. But instead of the bittersweet nostalgia I expected, I felt something else entirely. Freedom. When I pulled into my driveway, the house loomed before me, solid, familiar, and no longer mine. I sat in the cab, staring at the front door. The keys in my palm felt heavier than iron. Tomorrow, I would hand them over to strangers, close the door on a quarter-century of sweat and sacrifice, and walk into a future of my own choosing. Hannah and Eric were still 3 days away from returning from Seattle. They would step off that plane expecting to find their compliant old father waiting to be packed off to their so-called resort. What they would find instead was an empty house and a lesson they would never forget. I shut off the engine, but the ticking under the hood echoed in the silence. I could not bring myself to get out right away. I just sat there, staring at the place I had built nail by nail, board by board, for the woman I loved. New deed or not, I still had 30 days of access, and I intended to use them well. I drove down to the Starbucks on Division Street, parked in the lot, and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady as stone when I dialed directory assistance. 24-hour locksmith. Within minutes I had a connection. AAA emergency locksmith, Johnny speaking. "I need every lock on my house changed today," I told him. "As soon as possible. I'll pay cash." 2 hours, he replied without hesitation. "Give me the address." Back at the house, I waited in my truck, watching Mrs. Patterson water her roses next door. She waved, kind as always, and I forced a wave back. My chest tightened at the thought of how much I was hiding from her, and from everyone who still thought they knew me. Eddie showed up in a beat-up van, his tools rattling in the back. A man in his 50s, clearly the kind who had seen every kind of midnight lockout and domestic mess Portland had to offer. "Security issue?" he asked, eyeing the brass fixtures on my front door. "New ownership situation," I said evenly. "Better safe than sorry." He gave a knowing nod, like he had heard it all before, and went to work. I stood there on the porch watching as he unscrewed the locks I had installed 15 years ago, the polished brass Marion had picked out because it matched the old knocker she loved so much. "These are solid," Eddie said as he worked. Somebody knew what they were doing. "That was me," I replied quietly. "I like things built to last." The replacements were silver, modern, sharp clicks replacing the familiar thud of the old brass tumblers. They sounded colder, more mechanical, more final. "Here are your new keys, sir." Eddie handed me 3 sets on a ring. "Front, back, and garage side door. That'll be $450, emergency fee included." I paid him in cash, no receipt, no paper trail linking my name to this job. When he left, I stood in the entryway of my empty house, keys heavy in my pocket, and began the hardest part of all, packing up a life. Marion's jewelry box went first into my suitcase. Then our wedding album. The paperback novel she had been halfway through when she died, her bookmark still frozen at page 247. My engineering certificates. Our important papers. Her favorite cookbook, the margins filled with her notes and substitutions. I left the rest, the heavy furniture, the photo albums I could not carry, the clothes that still smelled faintly of her perfume. The rooms filled with echoes would stay behind for strangers. While I packed, I called Riverside Manor Apartments. "Do you have any immediate openings?" I asked. "Yes," said Mrs. Chen, the property manager, her voice calm and professional. "A furnished 1-bedroom, available right away. Month-to-month lease if you'd prefer flexibility." "I'll take it." She sounded surprised. "When would you like to move in?" "Tonight." Her eyebrows must have shot up on the other end of the line, but she didn't argue. Within the hour, I was standing in front of a modest building with trimmed hedges and a neat little community center. The apartment was plain but spotless, furnished just enough to feel like a beginning. "Cash deposit is fine, Mr. Grayson," Mrs. Chen said as I signed the paperwork. "First month plus deposit will be $3,000 even." I handed over the money without blinking, an amount that would have seemed impossible to part with just 2 weeks ago. As dusk settled, I loaded my car with the essentials. Through her window, Mrs. Patterson watched, her silhouette outlined by the glow of her kitchen light. She waved again. I waved back, swallowing hard. The weight of everything I was leaving, neighbors, routines, connections, pressed on me. But I knew I had no choice. I took one final walk through the house. My footsteps echoed differently in the bare rooms, as though the walls themselves knew they no longer belonged to me. I stood in the kitchen where Marion taught Hannah to bake Christmas cookies. In the living room where she had torn open gifts on Christmas morning. In the bedroom where Marion had breathed her last while I held her hand. "I'm sorry, honey," I whispered to the memory of her. "But you'd understand. You always told me I was too generous for my own good." I locked the new silver locks and stepped away from Alder Street, perhaps for the last time. The rearview mirror showed the only life I had ever known shrinking behind me. Ahead, Sunset Manor waited, bathed in the glow of a dying sun. I lugged my suitcase up to the door of my new apartment, fumbling with the unfamiliar silver keys until the lock finally gave way. Inside, the place smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and stale air, like a motel you stop at out of necessity, not comfort. I set the suitcase down with a thud and reached for my phone. The next step of my plan, the final step, required one more call. One more move on the board that would deliver Hannah and Eric the shock of their lives. The apartment itself was functional but lifeless. Generic furniture. Beige walls. No history. No soul. I stood there for a long minute, Marion's framed photo already perched on the nightstand as if it were anchoring me in this foreign space. I opened my laptop at the little dining table, scrolling through banks until one caught my eye, Willamette Community Bank. Not a big chain, not the kind that treats you like a number. They specialized in discretion, in personal service. Exactly what I needed to protect nearly $800,000 from the vultures who thought they had a claim to it. I dialed the number. Willamette Community Bank, Private Banking Division, this is Caleb Turner. Mr. Turner, my name is Walter Grayson, I said, steady as stone. I need to open a new account for a substantial deposit. Around $790,000. There was the briefest pause on the other end, just long enough for him to catch his breath. We'd be delighted to assist you, Mr. Grayson. When would you like to meet? Monday morning, 9 o'clock, I replied. Perfect. I'll have everything ready. The weekend stretched out before me like uncharted land. For the first time in my life, I was living somewhere other than the home Marion and I had built. This little apartment felt like exile, but at least it was exile by choice, my choice, not theirs. Saturday morning, I brewed coffee in the tiny kitchenette, unpacking methodically. Marion's jewelry box found its place on the dresser. My engineering certificates lined a bookshelf. Our wedding photo sat on the nightstand beside the bed where I would now sleep alone. I went grocery shopping for simple meals, nothing that required Marion's loving touch. The young cashier with kind eyes asked if I was new. Just moved in, I said. Starting fresh. On Sunday, I wandered into a coffee shop called Stumptown Cafe, only 3 blocks away. The barista, Nora, a cheerful young woman with purple streaks in her hair, set down a steaming cup. "You're new around here," she said casually. "Retired engineer," I told her. "Looking for a quieter life." "Well," she said with a smile, "you found the right place for that. Most of our customers wouldn't know excitement if it smacked them in the face." I sat by the window, watching families with strollers, couples walking dogs, retirees reading newspapers. It was the kind of ordinary life Marion and I used to love. But instead of sorrow, I felt anticipation. By Monday morning, I was dressed in my best navy suit, the one Marion had bought me for Hannah's graduation, and walked into Willamette Community Bank like a man reclaiming his future. Caleb Turner was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, professional yet warm. "Mr. Grayson," he said, shaking my hand. "What brings you to us today?" "I recently sold my house," I told him. "I'm looking for a bank that values people, not just transactions." He nodded with real understanding. "That's exactly our philosophy. Tell me what you need." I laid it out plainly, a widower starting over, needing security and discretion above all else. He asked a few questions, nothing intrusive. "We'll transfer the funds today," he assured me. "By Wednesday, your account will be fully active." Paperwork was signed, debit cards ordered, checkbook arranged. Just like that, I became client number 9674428, with nearly $800,000 resting safely where Hannah and Eric would never touch it. The next 2 days fell into a rhythm. Morning coffee at Stumptown Cafe. Nora remembered my order, asking how I was settling in. Afternoon walks to a nearby park where old-timers tossed breadcrumbs to pigeons and swapped stories about arthritis and grandkids. Slowly, the new life began to take shape. Wednesday afternoon, Caleb called with the words I had been waiting for. "Mr. Grayson, your funds have cleared. You are all set." I hung up, staring around my plain little apartment. Marion's photo on the nightstand. My suitcase half unpacked. A life pared down to essentials, but mine alone. For the first time since Marion passed, I felt like I had full control of my destiny. That evening, I sat in the single chair by the window. Not Marion's recliner. Not the old armchair where I'd once overheard Hannah's betrayal. Just a plain, ordinary chair in a room that was entirely my own. I opened my laptop and typed into the search bar, "mini surveillance cameras." My fingers hovered for just a moment, then pressed enter. Hannah and Eric would be back Friday, expecting to find their obedient old father waiting to be packed away. Instead, they'd be walking into the last chapter of my plan, the part where every truth would be captured on video, undeniable and permanent. The final act of my revenge was about to begin. Instead of coming home to a grateful old man, they were about to discover that their so-called burden had turned into their biggest problem. I scrolled through page after page of surveillance equipment, obvious black domes, motion lights with built-in lenses, even cameras hidden in teddy bears. But my engineer's brain wanted precision. After half an hour of digging, I found the perfect piece of technology, a wireless mini-camera disguised as a simple phone charger. Wi-Fi enabled, motion activated, sharp video resolution, 12-hour battery life, and most importantly, a live feed straight to my phone from anywhere I had internet. Exactly what I needed. I paid the extra $35 for overnight shipping. $139 total, a price that would have given me pause 2 weeks ago but now felt like pocket change. With the camera ordered, I turned to the other piece of my plan, the note. The first draft I wrote was dripping with anger. Too raw. The second was icy and impersonal. It missed the sting of betrayal. On the third try, I struck the balance I was looking for, firm but dignified, loving yet final. I wrote it slowly in my careful engineer's handwriting, the penmanship Marion always said she admired. Dear Hannah and Eric. If you are reading this, it means my plan worked. I heard your phone call about putting me away, about selling my house and calling me a burden. I heard every word. The house is sold. $790,000. Cash. The money is safe in my new bank account where it will remain. I have moved on to a place where I am appreciated, not tolerated. Do not worry about me, worry about your own housing situation. Your belongings are packed and stored at Portland Moving and Storage on Division Street. You have 30 days to claim them before fees begin. For 42 years, I gave you everything I had. You repaid me with betrayal. I hope the lesson was worth the cost. Love, Dad. Thursday morning, the FedEx truck pulled up outside Sunset Manor with a box small enough to hold the tool of my justice. In my kitchen, I tested the device, learning the app, walking in and out of frame until I was satisfied. The footage was crisp, the audio sharp. Whispered words came through clear as a bell. That afternoon, I drove to my old house for the very last time, using the garage opener Hannah and Eric never bothered to ask for. The door rolled up and I slipped the car inside, hidden from neighbors. The place smelled like home the moment I stepped inside, Marion's lavender sachets, the lemon polish I used on the wood, the ghosts of 25 years of dinners. But my chest tightened at the sight of Hannah and Eric's luggage dumped near the stairs, their unopened mail scattered across the counter. They'd been treating my house like a hotel while plotting my exile. I plugged the charger camera into the outlet by the front door, angling it to catch the entire entryway. Perfect. The app showed me the frame on my phone, crystal clear. I taped the envelope square in the center of the door, at eye level, impossible to miss. I walked through the living room one last time and touched the mantel where Marion's picture had stood for more than 2 decades. Soon another family's photo would sit there. It's done, sweetheart, I whispered. Justice served. I locked the new silver deadbolt, checked the feed one more time, and drove back to my apartment. The camera was armed. The note was waiting. The trap was set. Back in my chair, phone in hand, I stared at the live feed of the empty doorway. The timestamp read 6:30 Thursday night. Tomorrow, Hannah and Eric would pull up, already counting my money in their heads, expecting their docile old father ready to be tucked away. Instead, they were walking into their reckoning. Friday morning, I woke with a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. My coffee tasted stronger, sharper. Even the plain little apartment felt like a command center. By 4:30 in the afternoon, I knew they'd be close. Hannah always insisted on leaving Seattle by noon sharp, and Eric drove like a man afraid of his own shadow, exactly the speed limit, never faster. I looked at Marion's photo on the nightstand. I hope you understand what I'm about to do, honey. They left me no choice. At 5:15, my phone buzzed with the motion alert. My heart pounded as I tapped the app. A black SUV rolled into the driveway, the same one I'd paid to repair not so long ago. Eric climbed out, straightening his jacket, while Hannah stretched from the passenger side, her hair falling just the way Marion's used to when she was younger. He hauled the suitcases from the trunk. She looked up at the front door, smiling, completely unaware. And I sat watching from miles away, holding my phone like a detonator, waiting for the explosion. They walked up the driveway with the smug confidence of people returning to claim what they believed was already theirs. I watched on my phone as Hannah dug through her purse for the keys, Eric setting the luggage neatly by the door like he was moving into a hotel. She slid the key into the lock I'd had changed less than 24 hours earlier. The key wouldn't turn. Her brow furrowed, and I could hear her voice through the tiny phone speaker. That's strange. My key isn't working. She jiggled it again, harder this time, frustration seeping into her tone. Eric stepped forward, his expression tightening. Let me check the back door. He vanished out of view, and Hannah kept fighting with the front lock as though persistence would magically undo the locksmith's work. 3 minutes later, Eric returned, his face set with a nervous edge. Back door's sealed, too. And the garage opener isn't responding. His voice cracked, just a hint, and it was the sound I had been waiting to hear. Panic. What? Hannah gasped. That can't be possible. Dad doesn't even know a locksmith. Eric leaned closer, eyes scanning the brass plate. His instincts finally kicked in. These are new. Someone swapped out every lock. Hannah's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Dad." I watched her dial my old landline, the one I had disconnected days ago. Ring after ring, no voicemail, no response. Her face collapsed into confusion. "Try his cell," Eric said. Her eyes flicked up, panic breaking through her veneer. "He doesn't have one, remember? We kept saying we'd get him one for emergencies." That fear in her voice, the very fear of abandonment she had once planned for me, settled deep in my chest like satisfaction. Eric's head snapped toward the window. "That one's cracked open. I'll boost you up." And just like that, my daughter hoisted herself through the kitchen window I deliberately left unlatched. Her skirt snagged, she cursed under her breath, then disappeared inside. A moment later, the front door swung open, Eric dragging the luggage in behind her. Both of them froze when they saw it, the envelope taped squarely to the door at eye level, their names written in my careful script. Hannah's fingers trembled as she tore it down. Eric leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowing. I leaned forward in my apartment chair, gripping my phone with both hands as though I could feel the tension bleeding through the feed. Her lips moved, reading my words. The confusion drained from her face, replaced by shock, then horror. He sold the house," she stammered, voice cracking into a near shriek. "He actually sold it." Eric ripped the letter from her, scanning the page as though the words might rewrite themselves. "That manipulative old bastard. He was stringing us along this whole time." 790,000, Hannah sobbed, mascara streaking her cheeks. "He kept it all. That money was supposed to be our future." "Your future?" Eric snapped, his mask slipping completely. "This was your father. You should have handled him better." "My fault?" Hannah's voice rose, raw, jagged. "You're the one who said he was a burden. You're the one who pushed for the nursing home. And he was a burden." Eric threw his arms wide, fury spilling out. "Look at what he's done to us. We're homeless, Hannah. Homeless. Our lease is up next week, and now we have nowhere to go." The irony nearly made me laugh aloud. They sat in my living room, in furniture I'd built with my own hands, arguing about being homeless, while they'd been plotting to make me homeless in a nursing home. "Call a lawyer," Hannah said, voice shaking. "There has to be something we can do. He can't just sell the house out from under us." "With what money?" Eric's tone was venom now. "Did you forget? I've been out of work for 6 months. Fired. Blacklisted. Nobody's lining up to hire a disgraced financial advisor. And your little marketing job barely covers the car payments." Her jaw dropped. You told me you were consulting." Eric laughed bitterly. "Yeah, consulting. Consulting the unemployment line." I watched her crumble, the truth hitting her harder than anything I could have written in that note. No house. No inheritance. No savings. And now, no husband she could trust. "How could he be so cruel?" she whispered. Eric's reply cut like a knife. "The same way we were cruel when we called him a burden. He outsmarted us, Hannah. The old man was sharper than both of us put together." Through my screen, I saw them collapse onto my old sofa. Hannah's face buried in her hands, Eric staring at my letter as though he could burn through the ink with rage. That was enough for me. I closed the app. I'd seen all I needed. In my small kitchen, I reached for a bottle of Marion's favorite wine, the one we'd saved for some special occasion that never came. A Bordeaux, 2018. I pulled the cork, poured a glass, and raised it toward her photograph on my nightstand. "To you, Marion," I whispered. "Justice served." The wine tasted rich and dark, like victory. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, Hannah, no doubt, scrambling for another way to reach me. I deleted it without opening, then powered down the phone completely. At the window, I watched the Portland skyline turn gold under the setting sun. Somewhere across that city, Hannah and Eric were sitting in my former home, tasting the bitterness of their own betrayal. And for the first time since Marion's death, I felt free. Truly free. No longer anyone's burden. No longer waiting to be managed. I was my own man again, with my money, my choices, and a future wide open before me. Walter Grayson had walked out of that house, and he was never going back. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.